Welcome to the Reading Internship Scheme Employer Series podcast for any of our watchers or listeners with us today. My name is Holly and I run the Reading Internship Scheme. And Lara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Lara Paxton and I'm CEO of GotDis, which is an early stage startup.
Fantastic. And Pranay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Pranam. My name.
Don't worry, we'll keep going.
I work alongside Holly as the employer engagement intern.
Thank you. So we're here today to talk to Lara a little bit about her experience of the Reading Internship Scheme and also what you do at GotDis as well for anybody that's listening. So my first sort of question to you, Lara, but feel free to give some context around other stuff as well, is how did you find out about the Reading Internship Scheme, sort of first of all, for any employers that have never done this before and they're sort of thinking, where do I start?
Yeah. So I was lucky enough that on LinkedIn, I'm connected to someone that works at the career services there. And so she got in touch to see if I'd be interested. And at the time, I wasn't sure kind of how it would work and how it might work for us, given that we're an early stage startup and stuff. But once I got more information and realized it was virtual during the pandemic, and at that time, Reading University was also offering 100% funding, which was fantastic for an organisation like us, and fantastic for students when it was at a time when lots of people were pulling back on internships. And so yeah, jumped at the opportunity, really.
Brilliant. And in terms of the application process then, so the next sort of things that you did, how did you find that? Because I know some employees that we talk to before they understand the process can think that it might be quite a long or lengthy process. How did you sort of find that, along with other things that obviously you had to do work-wise?
Yeah. It was actually a really smooth process because there's kind of a lot of support that the career service gives. So, essentially it was kind of putting together an advert, and then obviously that gets taken and put online on the kind of internal Reading system. So then you don't have to do anything in terms of advertising and trying to get more candidates and stuff, which is often a bit of a headache when you're trying to find people for your organisation as in the recruitment stage. And then the CVs get sent to you, so then you have them all the applications, so you can then go through them and shortlist for kind of interviews. Then the interviews stage was kind of easy to set up in terms of arranging virtual interviews with everyone, which was really good. And and then kind of went through that process, which we sort of designed ourselves, how we wanted that to work, but then to kind of select the successful candidate. And one thing that I really liked was one of the biggest complaints you hear students kind of talking about is they apply for jobs and never kind of get any feedback on it and stuff. And I like the commitment that Reading University has, that if you are part of the process, you do need to be committed to be able to give feedback to each candidate if they are unsuccessful. And I think that's a really important part, not just for kind of your employer branding and who you are as an organisation, but in developing those relationships and providing kind of development opportunities for students to understand how they can improve for kind of future applications that they might do. And so, the selection process is a bit, as an employer, that you need to kind of, decide how you want to go about that and that you're in control of that, and then kind of notifying candidates with feedback. But in terms of a lot of the upfront stuff at recruitment, which is often quite time consuming, that's all taken care of by Reading University. So that's really good. And we had a great range of candidates that wanted to apply for the role, which is really nice to, not have kind of necessarily people that are specifically looking for a career in that area, but they might have a certain interest. So we had all kind of different backgrounds of degrees and different interests and stuff and different reasons why they were applying, and the quality of candidates was fantastic. It wasn't just a CV application. Everyone had taken the time to write a cover letter as well, so it really gave you some insight into who the individuals were. So the recruitment process was great.
Brilliant. And would you say, just off the back of that, sort of having such a wide range of applicants that have done or are doing so many different degrees, do you see that as sort of real positive? Because I know that when we speak to some employers sort of at the very beginning of the process, if they've got a certain project in mind, they might only think they want to see from a certain type of student. So would you sort of just tell us a bit more about that and how maybe you found that?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally for a lot of graduates, quite often you go into university sort of potentially having certain kind of careers in mind, but 3 years is a long time, and you're exposed to so many different aspects at university, different modules, learning from kind of fellow students on the subjects that they're doing. There's loads of societies you can get involved in, and so during those 3 years, your aspirations can kind of change during that time. And I think it's the same for kind of going out and doing work experience. When I'm looking for graduates, I want graduates that are passionate about kind of making a difference and being able to kind of contribute to their work, but are kind of open to learning new things. And I think when you kind of look at all the different kind of areas, so for example, last year we were looking for a marketing intern, and so I had people applying that were really passionate about social media, and then people that were applying that were really passionate about the kind of data analytics part of marketing, and then people that wanted to be kind of content writers and stuff. And so you get a kind of broad range, and you can really kind of refine what is it actually that we're looking for. And I probably could have happily hired quite a lot of people last year to help us out, because you just get that kind of whole varied backgrounds of different things that people want and stuff. Whereas I think if you kind of go in there already having a preconceived idea of what you want from a particular candidate, sometimes it's not necessarily kind of helpful, because then you're not giving yourself the full opportunity to see what's possible and all the possible candidates out there. And quite often that can change your viewpoint during the selection process of actually, okay, I think actually I need a candidate that has a real interest in these particular areas. And I think, degree subjects don't necessarily align to kind of career paths. And quite often graduates are just wanting to get exposure and experience, and learn about lots of different things in a business context or whatever it might be, to try and kind of help refine where they might want to kind of go to once they graduate. And I think also another thing that surprised me in the recruitment process, because I didn't realise, was that it also included people that had just graduated. Yes. So you had a full range from first year right through to people that had actually graduated. So if you are actually looking for potential talent to continue with you in the organisation, then there's also that opportunity to find interns who may become your permanent employees at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you found that such a positive experience, and it's really valuable for us as well, because they're the sort of things that we like to hear from employers when they say we're open to all degree disciplines, we're open to sort of all of the year groups that can apply, because it means then as well that you get as many applicants as possible, because on the job description then it's not stating only apply if you have or if you do X, Y, Z. It means that a lot of students can apply, and then you get, like you say, that wide range of choice, really. So that's really positive. I'll hand over to you now, Prunell, because I've done quite a bit of talking already.
Yeah. You said that you had a wide sort of range of candidates. How was your interview experience with all these different types of students from different degrees and different backgrounds?
Yeah, it was brilliant, because I think what was nice, obviously, because they'd written cover letters, I had a little bit of kind of background as to the individuals. And what's always nice in cover letters is when candidates research who you are as a company, not necessarily fully in depth, but to at least kind of know what you do and be able to align the reason why they're applying and what resonates for them in terms of what you do as an organisation. That's always great to see for an employer. But I think in terms of the interview process, it just gives you a real opportunity to kind of see candidates. Like I say, quite often you have a preconceived notion of what you might want, and actually when you're sitting in interviews, that's when it kind of comes through that you might kind of change actually your view of what you're actually kind of looking for. And I think it just pushes the boundaries of those kind of ideas of kind of set career paths, because I think in this day and age, when you go out into the workplace, a lot of people, they go out into their first job and they get exposure to kind of business environment, get to understand what all the different functions do. There's so many roles that cross over functions these days. And it really gives you a chance to kind of look into it. For myself, I did my degree in African studies. Took me about 5 years to figure out even what HR was and that I wanted to go into HR. Then had 15 years of doing HR, and obviously now creating a startup, but even kind of recently have got more interested in user experience and UX and kind of understanding all of those kind of aspects. So I think in careers these days are not kind of a set defined career path, and it's great if you can kind of look to pick up other skills that can cross over and benefit into kind of other areas. So I think kind of being open to those different graduates gets you to think differently. So the interns that we had last year, we had someone that had an economics degree and someone that had an English literature degree. And so that was brilliant because they had their own kind of skills and interests, and some of them were the same, and some of them were kind of different aspects that they really like to focus on. And I think that's what's really important in the workplace, in teams, is to have a group of people that have lots of different interests as well as kind of things that connect them together too, because then you're able to have a full range of skills within a team, and you can really focus on stuff. So the economic student was really interested in kind of some of the research aspects and kind of really understanding the business and how it worked, from kind of the finance through to marketing, and all the different areas, and kind of strategy as well, a lot around kind of business strategy. And as a kind of early stage startup, I really valued that kind of input into who we were as an organization. And the English literature student was really interested in perhaps sort of more of the creative side and the blog writing side of things, although they both crossed over and then learned from each other as well on those different skills. So yeah, I think it creates lots of opportunities that you might not necessarily have thought of, and for me that's always what's exciting.
Yeah. You did a remote-based internship, so how was that with the different types of students you had?
It was brilliant, actually. I think at first, so I had one intern start, and then the second one came a bit later. So for the second one, it was a bit easier because we were already in a flow of working in that way.
Yeah.
For me, in my work anyway, outside of the early stage startup, I'm used to kind of working virtually and working remotely. So it's not something that's necessarily a problem for me. But for the intern, I know at the beginning she was a bit wary as to how that might work. I've still never met them face to face, and even Pranal, I know we had great conversations last year, and I've still never met these people in person, which seems crazy. Yeah. I feel like I know you all really well, and I'm really connected to you. So I hope one day I get to see everyone in person. But I think our intern from last year, she at the beginning, she was worried that not being able to go in the office and meet you face to face and kind of have those interactions in person might impact her ability to be successful in the internship, and to kind of I think when you're sitting next to someone in an office, you can quickly ask a question, or kind of just pick up on conversations that are going on around the office, whereas virtually you don't have that, and so you kind of have to find other ways to do it. But we designed a great way of working in that we'd have an hour catch up every day, and that was set. So they would know that we'd be chatting for an hour, and so I would, we also use tools like Slack, which are much easier for kind of faster workplace communications, and I think work much better virtually than email, just because it's a bit like a WhatsApp for work. So you don't have to do all the kind of formal hi and I hope you're doing well and everything. Yeah. Where can I find this, or what's the answer to this question? So finding some of those tools that help your work in a much easier way is great to kind of use. But then I think it's also kind of, I think what seemed to work well is what it kind of creates is for the intern to have to be sort of quite self-sufficient and quite resilient, and actually kind of go find information on the internet. In any job, Google is such a handy tool to have. Yeah. I use it all the time to look up things, to try to figure out what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter what point in your career you're at, Google is always something that's a handy place to kind of tap into. And so yeah, it kind of means that you do have to be a bit more self-sufficient and sometimes kind of try and figure things out a little bit on your own. But I think in a way that kind of certainly seemed to kind of help build up their confidence. So that was a big part of the feedback at the end of the internship that both of the interns said, was just how much they could see their confidence had improved over that time. Because I think sometimes if you're in an office and you're an intern, you can sometimes get more basic tasks to do, and you can sort of sometimes get overlooked for the meetings that are happening and things. Whereas I think actually virtually you kind of have to immerse the intern into everything. So whether that's kind of access to Google Drive or Slack, you know, just making sure they have access to everything. So yeah, I think, you know, finding those ways of working that means that interns have access to information, so they're not having to come ask you for everything that they need, you know, helps build their resilience and confidence and being self-sufficient. But also then kind of helps you as an employer as well, because you can, you know, kind of give them tasks, but make sure they have access to things, and then they can go off and you can kind of work collaboratively on it. So it's just making sure that the intern feels supported enough, that they feel that they kind of have access to what they need to get work done. But I think it enables actually a much more kind of flexible and collaborative way of working virtually. So I think once you kind of get into the flow of it, people do actually see that whilst we do all kind of miss some of the stuff of being in the office, you know, there are actually some things virtually working that are actually beneficial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I'll hand over back to Holly to ask the next set of questions.
Thank you, Pranell. So one of the sort of last questions for me, I suppose, would be in terms of the projects that both the interns had and the sort of main tasks they focused on, how do you think they sort of had an impact on GotDis? Was there anything in particular that stands out to you that a student worked on that you're still doing now, or anything of the sort?
Oh my God. Yeah, huge amounts. So for us, obviously, as a early stage startup, and I think often, you know, people, students often think, I want to go to these big brands and be part of a big organization and have that on my CV and stuff. And obviously, you know, there's loads of positive things within that. But I think quite often, if you're one person in a large organization, it's really hard to kind of see how the work that you do actually makes a difference, because you're just doing a tiny little bit of a huge kind of machine of stuff that's going on. Whereas actually kind of in an early stage startup, you know, there's so many things that you don't have defined and that you don't have in place and stuff. And so actually, if you work in a collaborative way with interns and allow them the opportunity to go run with things if they want to, and it's something they think they can help with, then it can have a huge impact. So for us as an organization, GotDis is, as I say, in its early days, but we're a platform which is a space for students and graduates to be able to share a kind of blog version of their dissertation, or maybe an essay that they're proud of during their academic stage. And then, you know, working professionals and other individuals can go there and be able to share their blog on social media. And so it's a way of being able to kind of promote your potential as a student or a graduate, and a way of kind of, you know, to have that kind of content and knowledge be something that working professionals can learn from. And the way it kind of came about was I was on LinkedIn and I'd put a post out there, and a graduate contacted me and said, oh, I did my dissertation on a similar subject to your post. If you ever fancy reading it, let me know. And I read it, and it was about it was a sort of a newer area of HR, so it's quite an innovative area and stuff. And, you know, as an HR professional, when you've kind of, you know, done all your qualifications and you've got your sort of years experience behind you, a lot of your kind of learning opportunities comes from your network, but you tend to find that your network ends up being a lot of your peers and people at similar stages. And so often you find that you're not getting kind of enough fresh perspectives coming through, or kind of other types of learning opportunities that could be out there. And so having the opportunity to read someone's dissertation, you know, I'd read other blogs from other kind of working professionals on the same subject, but I hadn't got as much insight, because obviously it was full of academic rigor. It kind of had all the critical thinking and analysis in there. It had references to sort of academics who'd written about the subject. So if I wanted to I could then go and try and find more information. And as a working professional, a lot of academic sort of research isn't really available to you unless you pay quite large fees.
Yeah.
Things. So GotDis is about making sort of academic work accessible. It's about providing connection opportunities between working professionals and graduates, but it's about kind of multi-directional learning. And that was a phrase actually the intern came up with last year.
Brilliant.
Which I use all the time now.
Yeah.
But it's about those learning opportunities, so it's less hierarchical. You know, I don't think learning has to come from people above you with more experience. I think learning opportunities should come from everywhere, and so we hope eventually GotDis turns into somewhere that can kind of change what we call the relationship gap as opposed to the skills gap, and actually create more effective relationships between working professionals and graduates, so that when graduates get into the workplace, they're being given opportunities to contribute their ideas and really make a difference.
Yeah.
Given kind of that's who we are as an organization, it was really important for me with the interns that they got as much opportunity as possible. And, you know, they're kind of our core user group for part of the platform. So we did a huge amount of user research, so doing kind of surveys and interviews, and you know, there's no way I'd have got all of that insight without having the interns on board, because, you know, even if it is me going out and talking to graduates and students and trying to get that perspective, you get a different outcome if you actually have a fellow student graduate kind of asking you those questions and trying to get that information and stuff. So firstly, the level of insight we were able to get is beyond anything I could have done on my own or with some of the other team members. The ideas were fantastic, you know, things that we've not necessarily thought about. And so in terms of kind of our future direction and our strategy, you know, they helped inform part of that as well. We did lots of marketing campaigns too, so we were able to kind of build up the brand awareness, and, you know, we'd collaborate on that, and we would hone it in on where we were seeing the real problems that students and graduates were experiencing as they were emerging from university going into the workplace. And so we're able to refine our kind of content and our media campaigns to those kind of ideas, and Pranell actually helped us out with some of that content too, which was fantastic. And we sort of ended up building a bit of a community on our Medium publication. So obviously we couldn't take everyone on as interns, but to get and people had lots of different things going on last summer, but there's an opportunity if people felt like they might want to write something for us for our publication, that they could get involved still with GotDis. So yeah, it was it far exceeded my expectations. I think it is kind of partly down to the intern to kind of come in with open eyes and be kind of, you know, sort of open to whatever opportunities come and kind of grab it with both hands and take that on. And it's up to employers to create those opportunities, and not keep everything so rigid and task-based, and actually explore with them their ideas and thoughts. And certainly for me, as a working professional just outside of this internship, you know, whenever I'm kind of in there trying to solve difficult business decisions, if I have recent graduates in the room helping with those kind of business problems, they always come up with fresh ideas and different perspectives that a whole load of people sitting around the room with kind of 10, 20 years experience just don't see anymore, because they come from a different perspective. And so I think businesses would really benefit from working with graduates in a different way. And it was certainly something that I experienced last year with the internship, of seeing how much value you get if you give a much more kind of blank canvas for people to get involved in stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really pleased that the interns were sort of so integral to a lot of the things that were sort of achieved, and, you know, your perspective on how much interns can do and how you can sort of coach them and help them sort of get to where you can see they can get to, you know, in their potential. So thank you very much for that. I think Pranell might have a couple more questions to ask to sort of wrap up today.
Yeah, just a final question for me, really. What should employers know about the Reading Internship Scheme?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think Firstly, that it's really supported. So it's not a question of you having to do everything. The whole process is supported. The information and guidance is really clear around how the actual kind of process works, and from the finance aspect to the recruitment aspect, and all of those kind of sort of details that you would need to know. Then obviously kind of through the recruitment process, as I kind of mentioned previously, that's fully supported as well. And then even due to the kind of invoicing and finance part of it, it all went so smoothly and efficiently. It always kind of exceeded my expectations. So it was just a really, really positive experience for me. I wasn't having to chase things up or kind of wait for ages to get a response on something. So in terms of the actual kind of process is fantastic. In terms of the quality of candidates, I was really blown away just around the commitment of the students that applied for the program. How much effort they put in, doing all their cover letters, preparing for interviews. I'd given everyone a kind of set task to go to our website and give us a bit of feedback. And so, everyone had kind of really put in the effort to kind of do that. And as I say, it was really hard kind of making the decision, because out of all the kind of candidates, so many people had different aspects, different strengths, and the enthusiasm and the passion that the students had for wanting to kind of get involved and get some work experience is brilliant. So yeah, you're kind of spoiled for choice in terms of the kind of candidates that could come on board. And I think as an employer, as long as you kind of think about how you can make it a really valuable experience, not just for yourselves, but for the students too. And not just in terms of them being able to say, okay, I was given a project and I completed it and stuff, but actually give them some exposure as to kind of how businesses work, what the ins and outs of it are and stuff. Because I think, at that stage, people are just wanting to learn as much as they possibly can, so that they can really kind of think about where they might want their future direction of their career to go to some extent. So it's a learning opportunity on both sides if you kind of use it in the right way. But yeah, the internship experience for me was fantastic, which is why I'm signed up again for this year.
Yeah. And we're glad to see that as well. We can't wait to work with you again this year. I think that's pretty much all of our questions, isn't it, Pranell, today? Yeah. So thank you again very much for joining us, Lara. And I hope anyone who is watching or listening has found that really useful. I'm sure you have.